I think we're back on and ready. So when I was asked to preach here this morning, a song immediately came in my mind. I already told you I'm a pianist, and music is a huge part of who I am. I love it. It ministers to me regularly. But when Helen first asked me if I would be able to preach here this morning, a song just came back that I had sang years and years and years ago in our church choir. And the song title is called Find Us Faithful. Here's some of the lyrics of this song. We're pilgrims on the journey of the narrow road, and those who've gone before us line the way. Cheering on the faithful, encouraging the weary, their lives a stirring testament to God's sustaining grace. Surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run the race, not only for the prize, but as those who've gone before us, let us leave to those behind us the heritage of faithfulness passed on through godly lives. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. After all our hopes and dreams have come and gone, and our children sift through all we've left behind, may the clues that they discover and the memories they uncover become the light that leads them to the road we each must find. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. Now, if you're like me, you're scratching your head and saying, why this song? And why this church? Why these people for this song? And as I continue to think about that, like, is this your message for the people of Otterbein? The Lord reminded me that my great-grandparents, Harry and Vita Mason, attended church here. They're my dad's grandparents, and we loved them dearly. They attended here before the Lord called them home, and to my knowledge, they were faithful people in your congregation, singing, I believe, in the choir. And it reminded me that who our parents and who our grandparents and even our great-grandparents are in the Lord matters, because they can have a huge impact on who we become. Because in my line of work, I'm a physician assistant. I see what I would call generational curses being passed down. Well, my mom was this, or my dad was this, or my grandparents were this. But I'm here to tell you that there are generational blessings. And one of them is a solid faith being passed down from grandparent to parent to child to then their grandchildren. It reminded me that who we are and how faithful and how faith-filled we are matters to the generations that will come behind us. May all who come behind us find us faithful. So today I want to look at a well-known Old Testament story of three men who were truly faith-filled and faithful to their God. If you want to read along, we will be in the book of Daniel, chapter 3. I encourage you to read along. We will kind of be reading it in sections. So keep it open. Even when you think I'm done, I may not be and probably will not be. So just stay open to Daniel chapter 3, and we'll plug along through the story of Daniel, but mostly his friends. So in the book of Daniel, we read of four men who were taken into captivity by the Babylonians. For those of you who don't quite remember the history of this part of the Bible, what had happened was the people of Israel had not been faithful. They had not been faithful to their God. They had not been obedient to their God. And so he sends in two nations. The Assyrians come in and they capture the northern kingdom of Israel. That has already taken place. Now the Babylonians have come in and they have laid siege, meaning they surrounded the city of Jerusalem. And they are starting to take captives from there as well. And 4 of those people that were taken captive were given new names. The first one, his name was Daniel. And Daniel meant, God is my judge, but they gave him the name Belshazzar. To Hananiah, I'm sorry, you know what, maybe I feel bad I'm like breathing into that and causing a stir. Would this one be better, do you think? Could be. All right, let's try that instead. I don't mind holding it, I don't think. We'll try it. All right. Is this all right? Ooh, that's really loud. Okay. All right, so to Hananiah, which meant the Lord shows grace, he was given the name Shadrach by the Babylonians. To Mishael, which means who is what God is, he was given the name Meshach. And to Azariah, which means the Lord helps, he was given the name Abednego. Now, though the Babylonians changed their names, they would not change who their God was. They would remain faithful to the God of Israel, Yahweh. And I just, as I was reading about this change of name, I thought how beautiful it is that when we are in Christ, as I was talking about with the kids and the pumpkin, and Jesus comes in and he takes out the goo and he puts his light inside of us, we also received a name change. We are no longer condemned. We are no longer stuck in sin and chained to it. We are chosen. We are forgiven. We are a child of God. We are a co-heir with Christ. Do you know what that means, to be a co-heir with Christ? If you're an heir to your family's inheritance, you get it all. If we are co-heirs with Christ, we get it all. And that is a beautiful promise, church, that we receive when we bring Jesus in and ask him to clean up the mess. And he is so faithful to do it. And we can cling to our new name. We can let the old go, and the new name is ours. So when these men, they had been given their new names, and they're presented to King Nebuchadnezzar, who was over the Babylonians. And in Daniel chapter 1, verses 19 and 20, we read this. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding, about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. God was blessing them. Even though they had been exiled, God was still with them. And they were brought into the king's service, but with authority comes certain expectations. And King Nebuchadnezzar builds this ginormous 90-foot tall by 9-foot wide gold statue, an idol. And he tells the people, all these people in authority in his kingdom, you're going to come and you're going to set an example that when the musicians play, you're going to get down on your knees and you are going to worship this idol, this 90-foot tall statue made of gold. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not bow down, as we know the story. And there were some who were present who were more than eager to turn them over to King Nebuchadnezzar. And I kind of chuckle at this, because isn't this just the way it is sometimes? You're going about what you think the Lord is calling you to do. You're trying to remain faithful. You're trying to do the things of God. And Satan uses people, sometimes even people who are close to us, to derail us, to throw us under the bus, so to speak. But this is how the men of God react to the king in Daniel 3:13 through 18. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now," and I'm saying, I'm going to give you a second chance. All right, so now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Friends, have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a place where you are being condemned for doing the right thing and you're saying, I need to defend myself. I gotta give my side of the story before they hear something wrong. Sometimes we do not need to defend ourselves, okay? If we are walking in truth and if we are following the word and we are being obedient, sometimes we just need to be still and let the Lord fight the battle for us. All right, so back in verse 17, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. That's faith. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. That is faith. And he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, that is key. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. May all who come behind us find us as faith-filled and as faithful as these three men, faced with the choice to die in a fiery furnace or to bow down to an idol. Now, church, before you get thinking, boy, I don't think I'm ever going to be faced with this. I don't think I'm ever going to be faced with a 90-foot idol by 9 foot wide and a crazy king. I want you to think again. Because we have idol upon idol upon idol surrounding us in our culture today. Anything, and I mean anything, that we put above our devotion and obedience to the one true King is an idol. That is the definition of an idol. Anything that we put above God, our wealth, our phones, our social media, our politicians. Yep, I said it. Our politicians. Oh boy. Our families, our jobs, our homes, the ways of our culture that don't align with the Word of God, but we buy into them to keep the peace, so to speak. It's idols. It's disobedience. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could have easily gone along with the king's wishes. They could have said, God, I don't really mean this. I'm just doing this to keep the peace. I'm doing this so I don't go into the fire. Please just forgive me, but I'm doing it anyhow. But that's not what they do, is it? They knew who God was. They knew what he commanded of them. And they faithfully declared allegiance to him and him alone. In 2 Corinthians 5:20, we read this: we are therefore Christ's ambassadors. As though God were making his appeal through us, we implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors. Helen's already heard this a wee little bit when I spoke at a revival recently. But an ambassador, if we send as a nation an ambassador over to, let's say, I don't know, England, I don't even know. Where do we send ambassadors to? So if we send an ambassador from the United States over to a foreign country, let's just go with that. And that ambassador goes over there with his family, and instead of imparting what the United States would do, they develop the customs and the culture of the people they're living with. Are they effective at their job? Are they effective at their job at that point? They are not. As ambassadors of Christ, it is our number one duty to remain faithful and loyal to him alone, to his word, to know it inside and out, and to obey it. Otherwise, we lose our effectiveness in our ministry, in our gospel, as we share the gospel and go out and preach it. We must stay true. We are just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, brought into a foreign nation, and you're like, well, no, we're not. We're in the United States still. I'm nowhere new. Remember where your citizenship is, friends. Where is our citizenship? Is it here? Our citizenship is in heaven. And so we must maintain the rules of the kingdom above the rules of the earth and the world that we're surrounded in. And right now, they're kind of in antithesis of each other. And it is so crucial that we maintain citizenship to the one true King and loyalty to the one true King. We are citizens of heaven just passing through. We must desire, like I told the kids, to shine our lights into the darkest recesses and to impart truth and not let the darkness snuff us out. Do you know your King so well that you can say, my God is able to save me from a fiery furnace, but even if he doesn't, I will still serve him. My God is able to cure me from the cancer, but even if he does not, he's still good. My God is able to fix my finances, but even if he doesn't, he's still worthy of my praise. My God is able to save the relationship that is struggling, but even if he doesn't, he's still got good plans for me. My God is able to rid me of my pain, but even if he doesn't, I'll serve him through the pain. Our God is able, but even if he does not, we will still serve him. Let's read on in Daniel 3:19 through 27. It says, Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So the soldiers are dead. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, however, it says, and these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, Weren't there 3 men? Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw it into the fire? And they replied, Certainly, your majesty. And he said, Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Can you imagine this? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God. Where did that come from? He was just having them bow down to idols, and now he's saying, servants of the Most High God. King Nebuchadnezzar knew. But he says, Come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. And the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Now, friends, I just burnt popcorn in my microwave, and my whole house smells still like burnt popcorn. The fact that they did not even smell of smoke. Who is like our God? Who is like our God? Notice, though, he didn't keep them from entering into the fiery furnace. He could have snuffed that out. He could have said, Okay, furnace, you're not even going to work today. He could have got rid of King Nebuchadnezzar. But he didn't do that. He didn't pull them or stop the storm from happening. He entered into it with them. He showed up and was an ever-present help in times of trouble, just like he promises to be for you and for me today. He may not keep the storms from happening in our lives. We're going to have storms. But what is his promise? That I will walk with you. I will enter into the storm with you. I will be by your side. If we look around, even when the fire is blazing and the storms are raging, we will see the 4th man in the fire with us. Finishing out this story, we read in verses 28 and 30, Then Nebuchadnezzar said, Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Again, I reiterate, who is like God? Only God. Only God could take 3 men from a fiery furnace and put them into a promotion instead. Only God could humble the pride that King Nebuchadnezzar had, that he was right, and that he had the right path, that this idol was it, and have him declare, only their God is to be served. Only God should receive our praise and worship and our glory and honor. And these are the types of stories, and they're riddled. They're just beautiful stories. That is the beauty of the Bible, is it is just full of these stories of faith. And the more we read it, the more our faith grows. The more we read it, the more we realize who God was. Clear back to Genesis as creator and clear into Revelation when he will come again and rule, and every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is Lord. These are the stories that build up our most holy faith. But God has also given each of you a story. He has given me a story. How he provided healing, how he provided the peace, how he shifted the tide in our behalf, how he has restored joy, how he's brought beauty from ashes in our lives, how he guided and directed, how he protected, how he multiplied something meager into more than enough on our account. These are the stories that we should be imparting to the next generation. May all who come behind us find us faithful and find him faithful. In 1 Peter 2, 9 through 12, Peter says it best, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." Who's glad that they've received mercy? Who's glad that they have received mercy? Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans, the people that are not of our faith, that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. Our job in this life is to declare his praises, to live for him alone, to read his word, to know it inside and out, to put it before our eyes day and night, and to be obedient to it. There are a lot of things out there vying for our attention and allegiance, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But our allegiance must always be first to God and his truth. And anything that doesn't line up with his word, it's not of him, no matter who's saying it. And that's challenging in these days. We must make it our priority to know this word, because it is the only truth. And right now we're living in a world full of lies and fact checkers, right? Anybody on social media have the fact checkers? Like, that's the world we're living in, where we don't know what to believe, but we can always believe this. We are to declare maybe not how he called us out of a fiery furnace, but how he called us out of darkness. We each have that story, and how he called us into his marvelous light, and how it made a difference. And then we are called to live such good lives that others might see our good deeds and glorify him alone. May all who come behind us find us faithful. In lieu of singing that closing hymn, I thought